Recording in progress.
So when we start to feel discomfort, when we're reading material or even listening to conversations, or part of conversations where, our own preconceived ideas, our own prejudices are being challenged, or our own thoughts and perspectives are being challenged, and you start to feel uncomfortable, it is not necessarily a bad thing. I think it is something that we should embrace. And somebody made a very poignant sort of comment, during a recent writers' festival I attended at the time of the writers in Durban, and it was one of the moderators, and he was moderating a politically charged topic, and all the books were books centering around politics, and politics can be quite a divisive thing, and we sometimes don't want to hear other people's political views because it's not really our own. But he made a very, very beautiful point of where we should be reading and we should be listening to conversations where the thoughts and the ideas and the opinions are different to ours, because as you rightfully pointed out, that is when we grow. And I don't think there is anybody who can put up their hand and say, I know everything there is to know about everything. And wonderful, beautiful things can happen when we listen to different conversations, when we read people who write material that are outside of our comfort zones, or outside of the things that we know, whether we're delving into African culture or Indian culture, or white perspective or colored perspective, or even a perspective that's out of the South African realm of things. It is important. It's absolutely critical to grow. I think we live in times where it is impossible to remain insulated. The world demands that you step out of this cocoon. The planet, you're obliged by virtue of your existence to step out of it, because there are things that are happening that defy human comprehension right now, currently. And it is important because the very concept of humanity right now, even as we have this conversation, the very concept of humanity demands that we step out, that we see things from a different angle. Or else we're on a road to nowhere. We can't let that happen. We cannot let that happen. And we never stop trying. We only stop trying when we draw our last breath. We are obliged, for as long as we're alive and as long as we're here, in the spaces that we inhabit, to just continue telling those stories, reading the stories from different perspectives, listening to different conversations, being part of different conversations, and almost entrenching ourselves in spaces and groups and with people that look different to us and that think different to us.
And one of the fundamental things is that you don't know what you don't know.
And until
you face out of what's familiar to you, you're never gonna know.
Exactly, you're never going to know. And it's just, the world is a heavy place right now. It's very heavy, and I don't think, I'd like to, well, actually let me rephrase, I'd like to think that wherever you are, wherever you may be watching this from now, watching this interview, and wherever you are, wherever you may be, listening in this conversation, I'd like to think that we are all compelled to kind of speak out against what we're seeing, against what we're witnessing. It is incomprehensible, but it is very real. And we keep asking ourselves through all these catastrophic, and when I say great, I don't mean great as in wonderful, but these profoundly altering events that have happened through history, through human existence, and even our own past as South Africans, we're perfect, we always, sometimes we look back and we think, well, I wish I was around at that time, because this is what I would have done, this is what I would have said. Well, you're around now, and something pretty catastrophic, evil beyond comprehension, catastrophic beyond comprehension is happening. And just by virtue of the fact of being a human being, on the virtue of humanity itself, we are compelled to speak. And we do know. So we cannot claim not to know. We do know. And all these stories of identity, of belonging, of humanity, of compassion, of understanding, these are the stories that are now becoming critical. Because identity is the crux of all of this. Yeah. It's a people's identity that's being erased, that's being exterminated. And our own stories, you may think, what does my little story have to do with all of this? But identity, the story of identity, the story of human connection, the story of being bound, whoever we are, wherever we are. The human experience, the fundamental, profound human experience that is inherent to everybody, across your color, across your culture. It is there. And, we do know. We didn't know back then, but we do know now, and we're in it, in the midst of it right now. And by stroke of luck, of geography, we are sitting here, you and I, able to have this conversation. And what do we hear outside? Maybe the sound of traffic, or birds, or whatever. That's the sounds of our noise disturbance. That's not the luxury of other people right now in another part of the world. It's bombs, it's grief, it's fear. And let's talk about our stories, and let's be unapologetic about owning our identities and our stories. And we do know. We know now what we know, and we're in the midst of it.
I feel like it's so powerful.
I feel like it's so powerful because I'm just one person.
What can I do?
What can I do?
But you can use your
But
voice.
you can use your voice.
Because if
however many people understand they are just one
and remain quiet, then the
atrocities will.
It absolutely will. And the conversations, the conversations will and should always come back to that shared humanity, to that shared compassion, that human compassion. Those things that bind us, the conversations, whatever we're talking about, whether we're talking about Beaten but Not Broken, or the Village Indian, or whichever author, and whatever their stories are, the conversations always come back to that common human experience, and it should always be brought back to that, because the time is now. We can't talk about it in 10 years from now, and we can't claim not to have known. We know we're confronted with it every single day, and it's important conversations. I will always do my best, whatever conversations I'm a part of, whether it's online or person to person, to always bring that up, to always talk about it, even on social media, because it's not, I keep going on about it. Well, I have the luxury of talking about it. Yes, I have the luxury of dipping in and dipping out and choosing to talk about it. These people don't have the luxury of stepping out of the horror that they're living, and it's a luxury if they even make it out, and we're obliged. For as long as they're suffering, we're obliged to sleep. And even when people get tired, and even when people are like, oh no, not politics. No, it's not politics. It's people. It's people. It's lives. It's humanity. That's what we're talking about.
And I feel like this is why
we also have felt a connection to food,
because
because to bring it down to
that is what
searching for what comes to
what has
been your path. And the fact that responsibility but always maintained.
So with regards to the village Indian, I didn't quite get the question too clearly because it was breaking up, but I put the village Indian, and so I'll answer to the best of my ability. So the village Indian there's a very strong theme of identity. There's a very strong theme around race. There's a very strong theme around race relations. And, I think we're all guilty to a certain extent in terms of the preconceived ideas that we have about people that look different to us, that come from different communities, that come from different cultures. And being in a mixed race relation, in a mixed race marriage, and having children who are neither one nor the other. They're somewhere beautifully in between, and that embraces both of those heritages, both of those cultures. The responsibility to not just be truthful, but also be very circumspect about experiences, because if we are of different cultures and different backgrounds, and my interaction with you has not been good, my automatic response is, well, you've got to be a bit of a racist, that's the automatic sort of thing, the default setting that we have as South Africans, whoever we are, right? That is the default setting. That's my opinion, why it was important to tell this particular story, because it's very anecdotal, right? So there's different experiences, and there's different sort of things that happen, and my perspective and my take, and my perspective and my take comes from a very Indian background, having grown up in a very Indian community, in an Indian township, right, where my neighbors looked like me. We all spoke when I say the same language, I don't necessarily mean Tamil or Hindi or Urdu or whatever, the same languages in terms of the same culture, we look the same, so we speak the same language, sort of thing. So now I'm having to interact with people, we're South Africans, that's there, we're all South Africans, but we still come with the sort of things that we come with from wherever we've grown up, our past that shaped us a little bit, and that's why we interpret things the way we interpret, or receive the things the way we receive things. So, even the title, The Village Indian, is a bold, audacious claim to race and identity, because race is such a sensitive thing. We can't say black, or we can't say white, we can't say Indian. People's hackles immediately go up. But it is what it is, and I am who I am, and I am what I am. But I am not so facile that I can't challenge my own prejudices or my own stereotypes, and that is what it is. So yes, there were some people, within the village that did not like it, because what happens in the village should stay in the village. But for me, I'm a writer, I'm a journalist. Constantly, everything that I'm a part of, everything that I'm experiencing, everything that I'm witnessing, I am processing. And, I had to sit back and then think to myself, but this is interesting, the way I received things, the way I thought, is it necessarily racist? Is it necessarily racism? And then it also is the conversations I have with my partner, my husband, because I say to him, well, this is what happened, and sometimes he's been the one to point out, well, actually, that's not racist, and I think I'm a bit diplomatic, and there are times I'm a bit more hardcore, and then he's a little bit diplomatic. But these are wonderful conversations we should have as South Africans. Indians. They're not always pleasant. You know, the village Indian, like I said, there were people who did not like it because it hit a bit too close to home. The issue of race, the issue of racial identity, the issue of race relations, and you know, it didn't go down too well in some quarters, but that's okay. You know, I was accused by one villager of stirring. I'm stirring, and that is why I come back to the point that I made earlier. That is my job as a writer. That is any writer's job. That is any journalist's job, because I am still a journalist first.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
That is my foundation. And that is why I write memoirs. You know, a children's book is the only story I've ever actually made up. I'm gonna try fiction. I don't think I'm gonna be any good at it, because I think the things we experience day to day life, I think that is enough. The reality is enough. It's strange, you know. It's strange enough. It's big enough, and we must, you know, we must, especially around issues of identity, especially around issues of race relations and racial identity and belonging. We are inhabiting a world that comprises of so many different people, you know, so many different ideologies, thoughts, political beliefs, everything. We cannot remain closeted, and we should never be so self-centered to think that somebody else's experience is invalid or not important or is stirring, because in stirring we create a space that brings others in, you know, because if we're going to close ourselves up from both fences, we're setting ourselves up for major failure. And I think, you know, as South Africans, we've come so far. Yes, we've got 99 problems, we really do, but we've come so far, and we don't nearly give ourselves enough credit for where we have come from, where we are, and the possibilities, the beautiful possibilities that lie ahead for us, and humanity at large. And the writings, you know, the literature, I hope it absolutely stirs the soul, makes you feel uncomfortable, makes you question, because somewhere in the midst of all that madness and the discomfort, maybe there might be an epiphany of, maybe this is a different way of looking at things. I will always give myself the privilege of being able to have my thoughts and my perspectives, you know, to change or to see it differently. And I will allow people the right to tell me or to, you know, give me their perspectives so that I may change mine. Because I know what I know, but I'm happy to know differently too.
I feel like this is
a conversation that's so important, because at this point in time, a lot of people are trying to find their identity.
they don't
They necessarily
belong
in the village,
but they're longing
they're longing to know individual.
and
when someone that is supposed to take stand and
keep their identity,
hurry to say.
Absolutely. The village is the village, but it's also a metaphor for country, for community, for the world at large, right? It is the metaphor for all of that. And, you know, we shy around certain issues, we skirt around certain issues because we don't want to make people feel uncomfortable. So we kind of mold and morph ourselves to fit into small spaces or boxes. And in the process, destroy who we are, destroy our identity. We must understand our identity is important, right? who we are, the skin that we're in, the culture, whatever. It's all very important. But we must also be wise enough to know that these things cannot dictate and define us to the point of where we shut other people out and shut other people down, right? And that is the important thing. The village Indian is, it's like I said, it's anecdotal. There's funny things. I use a lot of humor. I bring the Indian lingo into it because that's all part of the identity, right? And when I say to soften bigger issues, I'm not saying that I want to undermine or diminish big and important issues, but I'm saying sometimes we don't want loud, screechy language or voices telling us about race and racism and belonging and identity. We want to read about it in a way that we can laugh about it. Not that it's a laughing matter, but because that somehow softens a hardness inside some people who may not be so open to hearing or listening or reading from a different perspective. So, that was what I attempted to do, because it is very different tone, it's very different language, and like I say, I understand from two different very perspectives because I'm in a mixed relationship and I have mixed children. I have an obligation to my Indian heritage, to my brown skin, but I also have an obligation to that side of my children's identity. And it's important for them, and it's important for us as South Africans because that is who we are. Race stripped away, religion stripped away, we're South African. And for me, that I'm so proudly and practically South African, first and foremost. And the Indianness comes in, and then we borrow from each other's culture, the way we speak sometimes, a bit of black culture, a bit of colored culture, a bit of the white lingo. We are borrowing from each other all the time. So South African people, South Africanism is a culture on its own. We come with our own unique things. We all inhabit the South African culture. And for me, the village Indian, I hope, kind of pays tribute to all those untold stories of identity and belonging, while also imbibing that South African culture and the South African spirit, because that is the thing I want to be true to ultimately, for the sake of community and for the sake of country.
I feel like the
methodology that you use
some South
African community
where
where they bring out the politics.
and
And because it involves humor, digest it easier and it makes it think.
Exactly.
And so it was a
We
really
have a
good approach.
superpower.
So it was a really good approach to you.
Yeah. No, thank you. I always say, we have a superpower as South Africans, and that's our sense of humor. There's sometimes there's terrible things happening in the country, like in the political arena, there's a bit of upheaval and there's a bit of disarray and there's things happening. And trust South Africans, and social media is not the measure of us as South Africans, by the way, but sometimes it can feel like that. But you just have to go onto Twitter. Like, if South Africans are being attacked, watch how we group together and watch how we are able to make fun of things. It's not to diminish the main issue or the problem or whatever we're facing. It's not to diminish that. But that is our superpower, is humor. And sometimes, if the tried method of getting message across, of getting ideas across, is kind of not, working. I'm not saying reinvent the wheel, but I'm saying sometimes maybe the tone.
Throw mags onto
That's throw mags onto it.
Yeah, you know what I'm saying? So just, and another thing, because us as Indian people as well, there's certain things we're stereotyped by, right? There's some things we're stereotyped by. and we can get quite angry about it, and we can feel quite sensitive. Any race group, we do have stereotypes. We do have stereotypes about white people or about black people. They are stereotypes, and we must own that, right? And for me, it's like, well, instead of actually getting angry and riled up about it, let me actually own this. Yes, I wear a lot of jewelry, and yes, when I'm sitting and chatting to Indian people, a bit of my Indianness and my Indian accent and the lingo comes out. I'm just putting on my posh accent for you. Own it. Do you know what I mean? And in owning it, you kind of take away that power to hurt and to wound. The self that comes with people saying, "Oh, this is how Indians are. This is how Indians speak. This is how you look. This whatever." Well, okay, it is what it is, guys. It is what it is. And I hope the village Indian, to some degree, in its audaciousness and being so emphatically Indian in the writing, at least there's a lot of Indian lingo there that some people may, black people, white people, colored people may find confusing. That's kind of unique to how Indian people speak when we're amongst ourselves. And I was deliberate in not putting, meanings in brackets or glossary or whatever you call it, because if you're out of my community and out of my race group and you're reading the book, I'd actually like for you to go and ask your Indian work colleague or your neighbor or your friends or the social circles. I came across this word, or this person said this in the book, or whatever. What did they mean? Get the conversations going. So it's not a political book, but it also is, if that makes any sense.
I feel it does make sense.
Because it's actually about the life. It's actually political.
Exactly.
From where we go to what we do, especially as South Africans,
and
this is what
community,
right? Because now people are
they're going to be
having conversations.
The masala as
the that's what.
And I feel like that's
perfect because as you mentioned, on social media, Africans are known for
let
something happen on TikTok and watch South Africans come through.
And it's at a point
where the international community said, listen, South Africans, we're not taking you on.
Or savage. I believe the Irish call us savage. And this was during that whole so obviously the Irish came under a lot of fire for their support for Palestine.
Yeah.
And
then South Africa followed not too far behind because of the ICC case and whatever. And somebody, an Irish person on Twitter, said, "South Africa, we're handing over the baton. Good luck, guys. These guys are savage." But said in the most wonderful way. It was meant in a good, wonderful way. And absolutely, we cannot have come from what we have come from to tread on eggshells, or to measure our words, or to soften our voices, or to shrink in whatever the conversations may be, especially the conversations of identity, of belonging, and of shared humanity. We're not going to shrink. We are not going to mold ourselves to make anybody comfortable. So whether it's a little book by a little somebody in a quiet little village in South Africa, or the really powerful, poignant experiences that are happening halfway across the world, we're not going to shrink ourselves. We're going to tell our stories, and we're going to be a little bit savage about it too sometimes.
I absolutely love that.
And I know what's next for Vanessa Govender.
I want to write again. In fact, I have started with an idea. I have started with something. Like I said to you earlier, I'm a very flighty person. I'm also quite a procrastinator. So it's been a couple of weeks since I've sat back at my computer to gather my thoughts, and the thoughts and the ideas often come at the most inconvenient at times. It's like 2 a.m. in the morning or 3 a.m. in the morning when I'm quite warm and snuggled up in bed, and I really don't fancy getting out of bed and sitting, at a computer at that part of the time, and depriving myself of sleep. So I want to continue writing. I even have an idea for a children's book. I've had that for quite a while, so I'm quite keen. But sometimes life gets in the way. But that's such a sorry excuse, and I'm so ashamed that I've even said that. Life gets in the way, but I've said it. Life gets in the way, But yeah, I'll be the first one to admit as well that's a horrible, lame excuse. Life gets in the way. You make the time and the effort when things matter to you, and it matters to me. But right now, I also don't like forcing myself, because when I do, then it becomes a tedious sort of thing, and it becomes like a challenging thing, and I'm one of those people, my desk is a mess, and my hair is a mess, and I'll be in my pajamas till 2 o'clock in the afternoon, because I'm into it, and I'd rather it happens spontaneously, it happen organically. But yeah, I will definitely want to write again. But for now, my eyes, my mind, my heart, my soul, every inch and fiber of my being is focused on the people of Palestine and the things that are happening, and the incomprehensible human suffering, the evil that is pervasive. That is where my attention is, that is where my heart is, that is where my soul is. And whenever the opportunity presents itself to write opinion pieces on this, I do so. I absolutely seize it with both hands. And I hope to always keep conversations like this going, where we can, if anything, as helpless as we may think we are, feel, but even just talking about them, talking about Palestinians, talking about the human suffering, talking about the occupation, talking about it, maybe put something out into the universe that they know that they're not forgotten, that they know that there are people who are absolutely integral.
I am with you on that.
I am with you on that.
We are not free.
We are not free until all of us are free. And
our heart
matters because our heart acts
with those who are suffering.
with those who are suffering.
If we
choose silence, we have your breath,
and we cannot. So yes to your voice, mine,
adequately voice out there.
Let us always be heard.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And may you keep shining as brightly as you are. I think, you do wonderful work. And I think, we always say we don't know if we're reaching people. And I always say, even if it's one, because it's a ripple effect, because that one then reaches another. Good luck. God bless, and keep doing what you're doing, my sister, because you are fabulous on every level. You really are fabulous on every level.
Thank you so much.